Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Arlo Miranda, Remax All Pro here with Jeanette Duarte from Mountain West. How you doing this week, Jeanette?
I'm doing good, thank you. A little busy here. We've been working the Antelope Valley Fair all week, had yesterday off, and be back at it at 4 o'clock today.
And how was the fair? Is there a lot of good
Um, you,
responses?
no, it's just more you go for networking, branding, just promoting yourself. And, a lot of times you run into past clients or, just it's mainly for networking when you do any of those events.
Oh, that's good. Yes, I've seen on Instagram. Everyone that I follow is at the fair every day. Looks really exciting. I have to be there Saturday to do a booth, a Remax booth there. But other than that, I was busy doing open house on Saturday, Sunday. It was really, really busy. We had a lot of people come to the showing, so it's been good. I see it picking up.
Good.
And now I'm going to start I'm going to start the show the way I always do by updating you about the market, about the Antelope Valley. I'm going to do a little something different today where I'm going to go by the year to year and the month to month in the Antelope Valley, but I'm also going to talk about California as a whole and how we are as a market. But in the Antelope Valley, we have 174 new listings. We have 17 under contract. We have 18 that are canceled. 43 back on the market. We have 117 that closed, 53 that expired, 130 that are pending, and price change, we had 111. And this is just by the week alone. We had last week, we had 87. So there's more of a price change. Just to give you guys some information, the longer you see the house on the market, the more likely the seller is to give you some seller credit, or they're willing to go down on the price. That usually happens after the 30-day mark, not before. I see a lot of people because I did open house and they asked would the seller be willing to go down, and I'm like, we just put it on the market Friday. And I say the way this works is you want to wait after 30 days to do that or to ask that, and then the seller's willing. And sometimes they are not willing. The average days on the market is 37, and the listing median price has gone up. When I started doing this number, we were at 450. Now we're actually at 474. So houses on the Antelope Valley are being listed for more. Some of the numbers that I find that are pretty interesting, and the reason I say that is because I want to explain the real estate market. Last year in September, we had 1,205 listings. This month we have 700. That's a 41% drop off. So it's significantly a lot of change. By this time last year, we had 5,726 listings come on the market. This year we're at 4,208. So about a 1,500 less listings, and that is a 26% change. Now I'm going to show you this chart here, and this is going to talk about California as a whole. Going back to August in 2016, this is pre-COVID, pre anything that ever happened. We had a lot more listings on the market. We were sitting at 84,238 new listings. As you can see right here, that the chart we're gonna bring up. And that's a considerable less amount as I'll show you as the graphs go on. Like there is less inventory in the Antelope Valley in California as a whole. So we had 84,000 back in August 2016. Pre-COVID, we had 82,000 listings coming to market. And right now, as of August 23, we're sitting at 41,612 listings on the market. That's considerably a lot less. If you look at pre-COVID, until now, we have 40,000 less listings that are on the market. And I want to bring that up to say this, as interest rates go up, you're going to begin to see, as interest rates go up, you're naturally going to see less listings. But when you see interest rates go up, when you see interest rates go up, you're going to see less listings come on the market. And when you see more listings come on the market, you're going to see interest rates go down. Now, the reason I want to bring up these charts, yeah, we are less in California as a whole. We're at 40,000 less, but the less people there are competing in the market, the more chances you have of getting your offer approved. And the reason I say this is because the more there's people competing for your house, naturally that's going to drive home prices up. So it is good that we have less listings on the market. Yes, it is good that interest rates are going up because, like I said, interest rates is no different than any other product on the market. It's about supply and demand. So right now you're having less people competing for the houses. Now, if we had interest rates going down, you would have a lot more listings coming on the market, and you're gonna have a lot more people competing for the house, which is gonna drive the listing up, and it's gonna drive ultimately what people don't want to see. They're gonna see home prices go up. Were there any changes to the interest rate, Jeanette, this week?
Yeah, so changes to the interest rates. Do you actually want to just kind of cover this chart here that we brought up?
Yes, I can't see it on my screen.
Okay, hold on one second. All right, we're having some technical difficulties.
Oh, it's okay, it
Um,
happened.
All right, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but yes, definitely I'll share interest rates. So they did increase slightly again. Of course, the feds did talk we're not sure what's going on, but yesterday the interest rates did increase twice. Today they did settle down just a little bit, but where we're sitting is on FHA and VA, the government loans, we're sitting right about 7% now. And on our conventional loans, we're right about 7.875. So I know there's like the market average, we're pretty close to that. And I know that sometimes people wonder like why do we have certain rates and some other people have lower rates and some people have higher rates. You're always going to see that, you know, different lenders will have different rates and it all just kind of captures everything, right? So a lot of times your online lenders are going to have a little bit of a lower interest rate. And these are some of your, you know, just online lenders. I don't want to mention any names. But a lot of times they don't have the overhead that we have. So running an office with a branch, you know, having staff answering phones, having staff that works the paperwork here, that meets with the clients, photocopies, all of that, plus keeping us legal and making sure that we're following all of our county, city, state, government regulations. We have HR, we have all of that overhead. A lot of time your online lenders, they don't have any of that. They don't have a storefront. So you do get more one-on-one customer service personal when you're able to walk into a branch. Also, I'm happy to say this, our processor in-house, she's able to process the loans. We draw our own loan documents here in-house. Our underwriters are here locally as well, and actually in California. A lot of times your online lenders, they outsource many of these things. So you might talk to them initially, but then you probably won't have very much interaction with them throughout the process. And they're handing your file off to someone else, possibly in another state and in another country, to process your file. So a lot of times you'll get the response of, let me check on that, or it's in line, versus you give us a call if you're working with us, and I'm going to be able to know what the status of the file is immediately because we're hands-on from beginning to end. So that's where people will see the difference in interest rates. I know I do get that question quite a bit.
Yes, because I did see, going off subject, I did see people at the open house who were telling me, hey, I've been qualified. And I said, how much? And they said, oh, I saw online that I was qualified for 420. And I said, okay. And I said, well, it's better if you speak to a lender or a bank, whichever you prefer, but you have to get it solid because yeah, they tell you one thing and it did change. So I did have a few people mention that when they said, yeah, I looked online. And I said, they qualified me for 410. And I was like, okay. And I said, did they ask you for any documents or anything? I was like, no, they just told me it's qualified for 410. And I said, well, the way it usually works, we need to check your credit score, we need pay stubs, we need your work history. All that comes into consideration.
Yeah,
So I did see
absolutely.
that a lot. And this week, what I wanted to talk about was FHA versus conventional. I always find this one interesting for the simple fact that when people talk about conventional, they always mention that they have to put 20% down. Not a lot of people know about certain things about FHA, but I wanted to see which one was better. But before I go over that, I've been seeing all over social media, Jeanette, of these 1% loans on social media. And I wanted to know if you could explain that a little bit, or if you come across that on social media.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody's going to try and figure out different ways to advertise, right? And every company does offer different things. Every company is pretty much going to offer your normal FHA conventional VA loans. Then you'll start to get into some different products that different lenders will offer. So a lot of times lenders will um, advertise loans at say 1% down because maybe they're getting a down payment assistance program for the other 2.5% of the down payment. So they'll say 1% down loans, or they'll say no down payment because they're going to piggyback it with a down payment assistance program of getting 3.5% down. So they'll say no down payment loans. Well, it's still a down payment, FHA 3.5, but they're using a down payment assistance to basically pick up that 3.5, but then you're still going to have closing costs. I have seen these 1% being advertised, these conventional loans, but it is particular um, lenders that are advertising it. And reading into it as well, it looks like what they're doing is they're piggybacking, for the most part, the ones that I've looked into, they're piggybacking a HELOC with it. So it's a first loan, and then they're doing a HELOC, which would be like a second mortgage, in order to put the two together, saying, okay, we're getting funds from a second mortgage, and then here's the 1% that you have to come down with. So it's just different ways to structure a loan, to advertise it. Just like when you watch a commercial on TV and then this fine print at the bottom, right, that you can barely read. When you
Yeah.
push pause and you zoom in, then you can actually see what it is. So it's not necessarily that it's a loan that you're just truly coming in with 1%. It's the way that they're structuring it. So then that way you're coming in with 1%, but you're still having a loan for the difference of it. So that's what they're doing.
No, yeah, because I did see it a lot on social media, and I've been seeing it lately. Now I wanted to ask you, is there, in your personal opinion, is there such a thing as better FHA or conventional?
Okay, so it's not that one is better over the other. However, you're always going to have agents, old school agents, they've been around a long time. It was always said that conventional loans were better than FHA, and it's because for the most part, conventional buyers put more down, right? Because you're either 5, 10, 15, 20% down loans versus FHA coming in with 3.5%. It's also been um, understood that conventional buyers sometimes have higher credit scores than FHA buyers. That's not the case. I've had clients with high sevens in FHA and high sevens with conventional. So it's just one of those things that people kind of have always had in their mind and think that conventional is better than FHA. Now, when you have a certain situation, so let's say somebody has a 640 credit score, for them, an FHA loan is going to be better than a conventional because the pricing that they're going to get on the interest rate and the pricing on the PMI is different on conventional than FHA. It's going to be better for them on an FHA. Now, if you're talking from the stance of a listing agent or a seller, then an offer is an offer. However, this is where it starts to be a little different. A listing agent may say, we want to take a conventional offer over an FHA offer because of
Yeah, that's
the
true.
house itself, right? Because maybe the house has a little bit more work that needs to be done, and they know that FHA appraisers do look out for a little bit more for the most part than on a conventional. They're both looking for the same things, major health and safety. They're both looking for the value, of course, for the lender. But what a FHA lender might look at, let's just say, for example, maybe there's a window with a small little BB hole crack in it. An FHA appraiser is probably going to call that out. Now, is the conventional appraiser going to call it out? Not necessarily. Maybe they're not looking at every single window in detail. And so when it comes to that type of thing, there are a few more things that an FHA appraiser has to look at, has to call out than a conventional appraiser. So a listing agent's going to know, hey, this house is most likely going to have too many call outs that the seller's not willing to do. So that's why they lean more towards a conventional or cash offer. Or they may know, okay, this one is not going to go FHA because of X, Y, and Z. They already know this house cannot go FHA, but it can go conventional or cash. And it even has to do with repairs, outstanding repairs, or, I've had a house that was partial, it was being remodeled and then they didn't complete it. That property was not going to go FHA, but I did have a buyer that was buying it as investment because he was going to fix it and then rent it out. So we were able to do a conventional loan on that property, but it would have never went FHA. So as a seller and a listing agent, they know this, and this is where they know I need this property to only go conventional or FHA.
Yeah.
But apples to apples, if you have two buyers that are pretty much the same and you have a property that's going to pass both appraisals, it's just always that thing in the mind of a conventional buyer is stronger and better, and that's not necessarily the case.
No, yes, because I do see on the when I'm looking at the MLS and when it says just conventional or cash, I already know what they're talking about. And to piggyback on what you said, yeah, some sellers think that the conventional loan is stronger than FHA. And I'm wondering if they're thinking, like, do you think the money comes in faster or the deposit comes in faster? I said the money's gonna be there the same way. Like but it also goes back to I think what we talked about in other shows, that when I do open, and something I'll go over later on, is that when you go to these open house, when I do open houses, it never fails. People are never pre-qualified, which I'll get into that later. So maybe that's why. Maybe it's an experienced agent on the other end that kind of maybe knows, like, okay, is this guy, is he really qualified? Is he stronger? Is he not? But I wanted to talk about conventional loans. They go down as low as 3%, correct?
That's correct, but you do have to be a first-time home buyer. So in order to do the 3% down, you can't have owned a property in the last 3 years.
But nobody ever talks about the 3% loan. I noticed that when I'm talking, engaging with clients, the first thing they talk about is 20%. I tell them, no, I mean, you could do 5, you could do 10%. But why doesn't conventional promote that they're actually lower than FHA? Is there any particular reason because of that?
So we do promote it. We have flyers for it. Here's the problem is that when you look at an FHA versus conventional, two things. One is the MIP on FHA is a huge difference than the PMI on the conventional. So FHA, that MIP is set no matter what. It's not based off of credit score. It's not based off of debt to income. Now on the PMI on the conventional loans, that monthly PMI is based on debt to income. It's based on loan to value. It's based on credit scores. So if you have a buyer that does not have high 700 credit scores, and we run a conventional 3% scenario for them, and you have that same buyer and you run an FHA 3.5% down, the monthly payment is going to be significantly less on an FHA than it is on that conventional. Because unless they have high 700 credit scores, then if they had the high 700 credit scores, then that 3% down conventional would be good for them, because now that monthly payment would probably be less than it is on the FHA 3.5, and they would be coming in with a lower down payment. So there's not a lot of buyers when you have first-time home buyers that come in that have a high 700 credit score. Usually your first-time home buyers are sitting in a low 700, maybe high 600s, and that's why the FHA scenario fits them better, especially because they're usually coming in looking for a lower monthly payment, which that's what's going to get them. That is the FHA scenario. However, I still have borrowers that when I run the two scenarios, maybe the conventional scenario is a little bit higher in a monthly payment, and they're still wanting to go with that conventional. And the reason is on the FHA, that monthly MIP will never fall off. It's going to be on there for the life of the loan. So the only way to remove that is at some point to refinance that house from an FHA to a conventional loan. Well, this person decides they want to go conventional. Yes, Jeanette, I'm going to have a little bit higher payment. It makes sense because after they've had that PMI on there for a minimum of 2 years, and as long as they've been current on their monthly mortgage payment, then they could reach out to the mortgage servicing company and ask for that PMI to be removed, and they will not have to refinance. So as long as, of course, the value is there, as long as they have 20% equity at that point after the 2 years, they can submit a request to see if it can be reviewed to have it removed. So the benefit is there because now they don't have to refinance, they don't have to pay refinance fees, they won't have to change their interest rate, everything stays the same and it'll drop off. So that would be a reason why somebody would still choose to go with conventional financing, even if their monthly payment is going to be slightly higher.
And then I wanted to ask you, have you ever had a case where it makes sense? Like you dealt with a client, you're like, well, these clients can either go FHA or conventional. Has that ever happened?
Say it again?
Has it ever happened where you're dealing with a client and you're like, well, it makes sense for them to go FHA and it makes sense for them to go conventional. So it's literally up to them to choose.
Correct. But I still help give the benefits. So if I had somebody that is basically the same qualification and it made sense to go both, then it would make more sense to go conventional because of that PMI falling off. Because let's just say that
Okay.
PMI is $120 a month, then in 2 years after they have to have the equity. So let's just say in 2 years they do have the equity. They may not have it in 2 years, but let's say it's 5 years, then that 120 is going to fall off. And as long as that 120 falling off makes their payment better than that FHA payment, then it makes sense for them to go the conventional route. And so
Mm.
that's where we'll run two scenarios. And if they're the same, it's going to be best to go conventional. If they're not the same, then that's where we see, okay, what road is going to get them there and make more sense, which route?
Okay. And do you see any pros and cons with any of the loans? Do you see something bad with conventional or anything? Is there anything that you see like, okay, maybe watch out for this, watch out for that?
No, because it just depends on the client's situation, their credit scores, their debt to income, how much they have for the down payment, because FHA will allow the higher debt to income ratios, conventional does not. And so when you package a client's file and you say, okay, they have these credit scores, this debt to income, and here's what they're looking to qualify for, and yes, maybe they want to go conventional, but maybe conventional, when we run everything, gets them at 500,000. They're like, Jeanette, that's not my price range. I really want to be at 550. Then we look at FHA because FHA allows for a higher debt to income. So then we rerun that same scenario and we're like, okay, well, let's run it FHA. FHA, now you can get to the 550. Of course, your payment's going to be higher, but now this makes sense for this scenario where they want to be at.
Yes. And then we talked about a question earlier and it was about is such thing as a better conventional loans. And I brought that question up to ask you this because someone did ask me at the open house. They talked about the FHA. They said if there's any loan that FHA will allow like a fixed upper. And then I thought about the FHA 203K. So in the case that we talked about earlier, is the FHA 203K, is it linear if the house was not in great shape than a regular FHA loan?
Yes, yes. So here's the thing though. One, your 203K loans are not being offered by everybody. So when the market crashed, a lot of lenders backed out of doing 203K loans. So for example, we don't do 203K loans right now, Mountain West as a direct lender. However, I can broker those out. So yes, I could still do 203K loans. I'm just not going to do them direct on our Mountain West platform, but I can still do those. Here's what's going to happen. We're still in a market where it's shortage of inventory. So you have to make sure that the listing agent is willing to accept a 203K loan because a 203K loan is not going to close in 30 days. You'd be lucky if it closed in 60, and sometimes it takes even longer than that. So it has to be a seller that's willing to take a offer knowing that it's going to hold up that escrow period. So sometimes when you present that, so let's just say, yes, it won't go regular FHA, but it needs about $10,000, excuse me, $10,000 in work to be able to finance it. That seller may say, nope, we just want to keep it on the market. We know we'll get a buyer that's willing to pay what we need, or we're willing to put that in if we can get this full price, because we know we can close in 30 days if we took a regular offer versus doing a 203K. And it's just very extensive because they have to get you have to get a licensed contractor out there. They have to do the full bid. That all has to be submitted. So a lot more stages and events in the process of doing a 203K loan versus a regular FHA loan.
Yes, no, yes, and to go back on what you said a few seconds, yes, we are at a considerable less amount. As I was looking at the numbers, pre-COVID, we were sitting at 82,000, but now we're sitting at 41,000 listings all over California. So we have a half as much listings before COVID. But I always tell people that's actually not a bad thing, because that means that interest rates are being driven up, which means there's less people competing for the house that you want. When you see interest rates go down, you will see listings go up. And another thing you're gonna go see up is that home price. So kind of what I tell people, if you're trying to time real estate, you're not gonna win. If you're trying to outsmart the market, you're not gonna do that. Because no one controls the market other than you, the buyer, you, the seller. It's all about supply and demand. The more people want something, the more it's going to drive the prices up. And the less people want something, it's going to drive prices down. And I think people, and I said this last show, people think that the government has a magic wand and say, okay, now houses are $100,000. Okay, great. No, it's all about supply and demand. We actually do have a free market when it comes to economics that's literally decided between me, you, we decide the market. And so when I saw those numbers, $40,000, 40,000 less homes, instantly people think about it two ways. Oh, we're crashing. I think about it, you have a better chance of the house you want. Less people are competing. And not only that, keynote here for people that work with other agents. In this current market, if you see there's less inventory and that house has been on the market 50 days, what other chances are that that seller's gonna take less? Seller credit. Chances are really, really high. So do not be scared when inventory is low, because that's a good opportunity for you to actually get the house that you want. And then you could always refinance when the interest rates go down. But one thing you can't refinance out of, it's a high purchase price. Now these two last questions, they came from a client, from a guy at the open house. He said, hey, how does FHA work? I hear that it's every 3 years. So he's like, so if I'm in an FHA house and it's been 5 years, can I use the FHA loan again? So how does that actually work? He was asking me.
No, so people get confused what you just said about the 3 years. The 3 years, excuse me, pertains to first-time home buyers using a down payment assistance program. So let's just say that you have an FHA loan right now and you want to sell that house and buy a new house as your primary residence. You can go from this FHA to another FHA because this one's going to pay off. So the rule is really you're only supposed to have one FHA at a time. Of course, unless work gave you a transfer and now you need to move to San Diego and it's not a normal commute, you can keep your FHA loan here, turn that into a rental, purchase a new house in San Diego with FHA 3.5% down. So that's fine. A lot of people just confuse the whole 3 years, which is down payment assistance program. So down payment assistance program says you can't have owned a property in the last 3 years. Or like we mentioned earlier in the show, if you're doing a 3% down conventional, you can't have owned a property in the last 3 years because that's a first-time home buyer program. So there's first-time home buyer programs and there's first-time home buyer down payment assistance programs. And most of those are always, you can't have owned in the last 3 years. But if it's just a regular FHA, there's no rule of you having to wait 3 years.
So that means that they want you to stay with the loan. So that means if it's 30 years, after 30 years, that's what they're asking for?
No, because you could also refinance that into a conventional at some point and purchase again FHA. It's just that FHA is geared only for primary residences, meaning you're going to live in this property as your primary residence. It's not to purchase investment property. So that's what they're looking at. That's why they're not wanting to give you multiple FHA loans, because it's for a primary residence.
So if I was 5 years into my FHA loan and let's go with 6, 7. Let's say I'm 6 years into a FHA loan and I refinance to a conventional loan. Now, if I want to buy another home, can I still get that down payment assistance 3.5 on that current home?
Okay, so you just mixed the two again. So you said down payment assistance. So down payment assistance is completely different. You wouldn't be able to use down payment assistance because you have owned in the last 3 years, if that's what the program you're going with. But if you refinance that house into a conventional, then yes, you can go and purchase another one with FHA 3.5% down. You're going to do them concurrently. You can do a contingent concurrent. I'm paying off this FHA, I'm going to buy another one, or I refinance this into a conventional and now I'm going to buy another one FHA. You can do that. There's no waiting period for that. And we have that a lot because you might
Okay,
have
because I did.
a buyer that bought
No, go ahead.
FHA and they bought a smaller house. Maybe it was a starter up. Maybe they have a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. It's FHA and now their family grew and they want to buy a 4-bedroom house. They can do a contingent sale and purchase. And this FHA is going to pay off the day before our other one's going to fund, because we're going to take this money and transfer it over to the new purchase.
Yes, and yeah, because I had the same client ask, because when I did the open house this weekend, it was well, it was a beautiful home. I liked it, honestly. If you see my Instagram, you're able to see that I walked through it. But I had more people come by buying for their kids because they would say, "Hey, this looks like a first time, a perfect first home." I was like, "Yeah, great." I was like, "Well, any home, depending, because real estate is situational, you'll have people come in and I've been in the houses that are priced a good house, and people would say, "Hey, this is a good first investment home," and I'm like, "Okay." So someone's first investment home is someone's life home. Someone's life home is first investment. It just depends where you are in life. That's just the way it is. But I had him ask me a question. He said, "Hey, I own 2 houses, and I recently talked to the bank, and they said that I have equity of 240." So his question was, "We're sitting in a house here that's 434,000." He goes, "The bank says I can pull 240." He goes, "My daughter would not qualify for 434." He's like, "So in that event, if I pulled out," he goes, "Number one, can I pull out my 240?" So two-part question. Can I pull out my 240 to gift her the entire 240? And number two, that leaves a remaining balance of $194,000, which my daughter can qualify. So if I gift her the funds, so the house is at 434, I'm gonna pull 240 out. The remaining balance is 194. He goes, so now can I gift her the funds? And number two, when she tries to qualify, are you guys gonna qualify her on the 194 remaining balance, or are you still gonna qualify her based on the 434?
So the first part of the question is yes, he can pull the money out if his bank is telling him he has equity of 240 that he could actually pull out, as long as he qualifies for it, because he has to qualify now for either he's doing a HELOC to pull it out or he's going to do a cash out refinance. He has to qualify for the new loan amount, which is his current loan amount plus the 240 now, right? So he has to qualify for that. And his 240, he's going to take it and he's going to put it into his bank account. Now, yes, he can gift that to his daughter. He would have to be, one, willing to sign a gift letter stating that he's gifting her this money and he's not expecting repayment of it. Because if he's expecting repayment of it, then we have to associate a monthly payment with the daughter for it. Okay, so if he's willing to, one, sign a gift letter saying I'm giving her this 240,000, I'm not expecting repayment, then that's fine. Two, he has to be willing to provide his entire bank statement, a full bank statement, all pages, nothing scratched out, nothing blacked out, with that gift letter to show that he has that money in there. And then sometimes some underwriters are going to also ask for the paper trail of where that money came from. to show that he pulled it from his equity and that's what he's giving to his daughter.
Yeah.
So that can happen. Now, here's the second part of your question was, is she going to be qualified on the original purchase price or on the 194,000 that's remaining since she's going to be putting the 240 down? So the answer is we would qualify her on the 194 because since that money's coming in, that's a down payment that leaves a loan amount of 194, then we would be qualifying her on the loan amount of the 194, not the full purchase price.
Okay, and you know what? Now that you answered that question, I want to ask you another question that's interesting that it didn't come to my head until now. So he pulls out his equity to help her. Does that drive his mortgage up on both on that house? So now
Yes.
he's paying. Okay, that's really interesting.
Because
Yeah.
let's say on his house, he owes 250,000. Let's just say that's his balance on his house. Well, if he pulls out 240, now he owes 490,000. So now he has a new payment on 490,000, or he's going to have two payments. So if he does a cash out refinance, it'll all be combined into one. He'll have one loan amount of 490. He'll make a monthly payment on that. If he leaves the first alone, he has that monthly payment. And then if he does a home equity line of credit to pull out the 240, he's going to have that monthly payment. So he'll have two monthly payments, one for the first mortgage and one for the equity he pulled out. But yes, his monthly payment will not stay the same because now he
Wow.
owes a lot more money. So
Yes,
you don't get to
and
just pull it out and not have a payment. You have a loan on that. The bank is saying, here's the equity. I'm giving you 240,000. Now we hold a note on your house for this additional 240,000 you pulled out.
okay, because when I spoke to him, I'm not a mind reader, but he was said like, okay, I'm gonna pull out the 240 and I'm good. That's the way he sounded. And now another question I want to ask. So now if he's able to pull out 240, does that mean that he has to prove income that he can pay the new mortgage?
Correct. His current mortgage, plus any liabilities he has, car payments, credit cards, any of that, plus the new loan for the 240,000. So
And
just because you have the equity and you can pull it out doesn't mean you can, because you have to qualify for that new loan. The only time that this is what people don't understand. You can have $1 million in equity. If you go and ask the bank to give you that equity, you're taking out a loan. The only time that you ever walk away with all of your equity and not a loan is if you were to sell the house. If you sell it, then that person buying it is transferring the money, paying it off, and then here's your money, here's all of your equity. But if you keep your house and you're pulling out the equity, then you're taking loans out on that equity.
yeah, okay, because when he talked about it, he sounded like, okay, I got 240, and if we go back to what we talked about earlier, I asked him who told you that, and he's like, oh, well, my bank called me. I said, okay, did they ask you for any statements, any paperwork? He's like, no, they just told me I can. Now, when someone tells me that, I was like, okay, chances are you're not going to be able to do that. I'm just saying it out there. But he said, yeah, the bank just called me and I said, hey, you got 240. I'm like, okay, and I'm like, usually when it sounds right, it doesn't sound right. And because I know in real estate, nothing goes under the sun, nothing goes uncovered, nothing's under the shade. No, everything is pretty much clear cut. There is no kind of like we talked about in a show a few shows ago, like escrow. We're not we're not like, okay, here's 5,000 and I promise you, no, it has to go through a neutral third party. So real estate is definitely something where you're not gonna get away with anything. And he just said, yeah, I got 240, I'll pull it out right now. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, that just now sound right. Like there's something like when they say they can, well, no one gives you free money. That's just not possible. You're gonna pay to have that money. So that's why I brought up the topic. And now I want to talk about the open house. We did a open house in Palmdale. In the 2 days on Saturday and Sunday, we had 36 people come. A lot of people come. That was a big turnout. And that's what happens when you have a great agent that prices the house right and doesn't go too high. And number two, it's a nice house. So when you have that combination, it's a nice house and it's priced right. And the only reason I wanted to bring this up is because when you see 36 people come to open house, it lets you know that it is a strong market and that real estate is going strong because not a lot of people had an issue with the interest rate because most of the people that came by wanted to purchase for a second home, for a rental, or like we talked about now, for their kids. So that's what I noticed about real estate is situational and is really where you are in life. And like I said, we're all different stages in life. But in that particular property, no one mentioned the interest rate. Everyone was just, and I'm being serious in it, everyone was just saw 434. They're like, wait a minute, this house is 434. I'm like, yeah. They're like, I thought you couldn't find the house at 434. And I asked people, what do you look at? And they're like, oh, I see it on the news. I said, let me tell you something. Don't. I said, that's why you have professionals. That's why you have realtor myself, or, whichever you choose. That's why you have lenders. So that lets me know that it is a strong market. It just depends where you're at. But not a lot of people did mention the interest rate. They just literally looked at the price of the home. They did not look at anything else, which I wanted to talk about something on the real estate side. It never surprised me that people come to an open house without their agent. And when someone comes to the open house without their agent, automatically know that agent is from the valley or that agent is from far away. And one of the things that I tell clients and one of the things that I get from my cousin is, and this is just for people that are buying and with an agent, it's never a good move for your agent to write an offer if they do not see the house. I mean, yeah, you could look at pictures and that's great, but you have to see the neighborhood. You don't know what the house on the street looks like. You don't know what your neighbors down the street look like. Because one of the things my cousin advises neighbors is, hey, you want to know what the neighborhood looks like? Knock this neighborhood, because that's what you're going to be living next to for the next 5 to 30 years plus. So I see a lot of agents come, I see a lot of people coming out their agents, and I just think to myself, wait a minute, like, he's gonna write an offer on a house that he hasn't seen. And it's like that's just not a smart move. And I see that a lot with agents that come from the valley. They never want to come up with their clients to go show that. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, which is really interesting, a lot of those people that came with the agents and a lot of people that had an agent do not even know the monthly payment. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're coming here to see this open house and you're asking me what the monthly payment is? And I said to them, that's something that you should go over before you see any open house. If you're being sent to this open house 434, okay, automatically you should know what your payment is. Because what if, and something my cousin pointed out to me, he's like, you do know that most of these agents send their clients and they're not really qualified. And I'm like, wait a minute. So they're going to a house that they can't afford because a lot of people, Janet, did see that monthly payment. I can't afford that. You just drove from the valley to see a house that you cannot afford. Is that something you see a lot on your, because I see a lot on my end. Is that something you see on your end a lot where people don't even know the monthly payment of the house?
Yeah, unfortunately, we do. The example that you gave, we do see a lot of buyers that are out there looking at houses. And of course, everybody falls in love with the house. And then they call us and we start going over numbers and it's out of their comfort zone of what they want to pay. So that's why I always tell buyers, you really need to get qualified first. You need to go over the numbers with your lender because when I qualify a client, I say, okay, here's your max qualification. So just throwing numbers out there. I might tell them you qualify for 500,000 and here's what the monthly payment's going to be. And then I say, where do you want to be comfortably? And then they give me that number and I say, okay, if you really want to stay in your comfort zone with that monthly payment, here's the purchase price that you need to be looking at. Because what ends up happening is if you work backwards as an agent with your client and you take them out there and show them all the houses they want to see, and then they get with the lender and the lender says that's going to be X amount and they're not comfortable with it, then you wasted your time, their time, plus they get demotivated, right? Because it's almost like that bubble bursting. They were excited,
Yeah.
they saw this beautiful house. They start imagining my kids in this room, in that room. I'm gonna do this to the backyard. I'm gonna do all of this stuff. And then they talk with the lender and then they're crushed. And then they say, okay, now you qualify for that price range. You need to stay about, let's just say 300,000. Well, then they get even more sad because they say there's nothing out there for 300,000. And this is why it's so important that they get with the lender step one. That way lender can see what do they qualify for, where do they want to be. and then go out there and show them houses, because then they're going to be happy. They're going to be excited because now they're looking in a price range that they know that they could actually purchase. If I like this house, we can write an offer. And then they don't have a bad taste in their mouth, because it's always you guys as the agent are with them. So they're going to think you're not doing your job. And then when they talk to the lender, they're going to be upset because they're thinking the lender's not doing their job because they're not getting them qualified at a price that they want to be. So it's just, it makes sense to get qualified first, know your price point, know what monthly payment you're comfortable at, and go from there. And too many times we see this, the client getting qualified, the lender not going over the monthly payment. And the example you gave, lender says, yeah, you're qualified for 450. Go out and start looking. Well, I'm going to look at 450, but now that monthly payment is not what I wanted. And we see that a lot.
Yeah, and because we had he came by with his wife to the open house Saturday, and then he comes by Sunday, and 100% of me wanted to say, look, tell your agent submit an offer right now. You already came to the house twice. You like it. You love it. What's stopping him? And then when I had the conversation with Oscar from Remax All Pro, I asked him, I mean, I just wanted to jump out and say, hey, let's get the contract out. Let's write it out. Let's get this done. And he's like, chances are that guy doesn't even know what he qualifies for. And then I did went up to him and I said, hey, you know, this is the monthly payment. Can you do that? And he did not give me a response, which lets me know that he probably has not been qualified. And I could see where a lot of agents do get discouraged and don't want to say the truth. Perfect example. Usually when I do open houses, I get tons of leads, but I already learned to kind of decipher them and kind of go through the weeds. And I ask people flat out now, look, don't focus on the whole purchase price of the house because you will refinance. You know, when equity starts to come in, you won't care what you paid for the house. What you care about is that monthly payment, because that affects your life in general, what you're going to do, right? And how you're going to live your life. And in my personal experience, I mean, if I was dealing with the client, if you're qualified for 430, first of all, I'm not wasting my time, and I'm not definitely wasting your time to show you something you cannot afford. If you have 435, okay, great. I want to know, can you do this monthly payment? You cannot? Okay, great. And I could see when agents do get discouraged, Jeanette, because I did see a lot of people come to the house and they say, hey, I want to pay $3,000. I will do the numbers really quick. Rosamond. They're like, what do you mean? Yeah, that's where you're gonna get the 3,000. They go, but I want to live in East Palmdale. Not at that price. East Palmdale, just to let you know, I said medium is 474. On my data. This house is at 434. It's a steal. We have another one coming up. It is listed 20,000 before medium. And that's when I said, I was like, so I could get it because you're going to lose leads right there, right away. When you say, hey, okay, how much can you afford? 3,000. Rosamond. That I can't do Rosamond. You can't do, I don't tell them this. You can't do Palmdale either. You're not going to do West Palmdale. You're not going to do the Lancaster. Best I can do, I sound like that punch out guy, right? Best I can do, Rosamond, California City. That's it. So I can see where people know they're going to lose their leads because I could have got a lot of leads. It just would have been a lot of paper, a lot of wasting time for me and them. And that's why we're professionals. That's why they come to us. So yeah, I do see when you're an agent, you don't want to lose that lead. I don't want to keep warm, but it's not. It's just pretty cut and dry. They were telling me 3,000 Rosamond. I want East Palmdale. Okay. Rosamond, East Palmdale. Okay. This is the monthly payment. You win, and chances are you're not going to get a house for 434. It's going to be 474. This payment's going to be about 4,000. And they said, okay, no, I can't do that. Okay. I said, well, thank you very much for coming. Orlando Miranda, Remax All Pro. Here's my card. If you have any questions, let me know. Now I want to close the show with this. And I don't mean to get into people's business, but as a realtor, people do get in my business. They get in my face, real estate, interest rates. So my last question I want to talk to you about, and I want to know if you get this or would you ever use this as, ammunition. We as professionals, we need something to come back with the client. So I had a person tell me, hey, I could never see myself paying 7% for something. Okay. I go, I understand that. I said, let me ask you a question. This is a personal question. How many credit cards do you have? He said around 5. I say, name me, and I'm gonna go with the medium. Medium means if this is your highest, this is your lowest, I'm gonna go in the middle. I said, give me your highest interest rate credit card. He said, it's 23%. I was like, okay, what's your lowest? He said, it's about 13%. I was like, so let's say your medium is 15%. So I said, let me ask you a question. You just told me right now you never see yourself paying 7%. But yeah, you have a credit card at 23 and you have one at 13%, and your medium is 15%. And I know what you're gonna say. I cut him off. I know what you're gonna say. Yeah, but I'm not paying 400. Yeah, true, give it. But you forget buying a home as an asset. When you're buying something with a credit card, not only are you buying at 100% price, 100%, but now you're paying 23% back on that money. When you buy a house, not today, not tomorrow, that appreciation is going to go up. So to answer your question, you told me that you're not going to pay 7% for something that's going to appreciate, but you're going to pay 23% something on 100% money plus 23% back. I'm like, you just said you won't pay 7, but now you're paying 23%. Explain that to me. And he just looked at me like, and where do you get this stuff? And I'm gonna ask you, do you ever use that with clients, or do you ever, are you as a lender, and this last question, are you able to kind of say, look, gloves are off, honestly, you pay higher credit card percentage than this, and you pay 100% back of the money plus 23%. So you're at 123% interest rate if you want to really be honest about it. Can you ever get personal like that with clients?
Absolutely. And I do it, trying to explain things to people with exactly that right now. In when they want to do a cash out refi and they say, are you crazy? I don't want to do 8% interest rate on a cash out refinance. And I say, but you're willing to continue paying 16 to 20% on credit card debt when you can consolidate all of that at 8%. Like, it doesn't make sense. And of course, they don't want to get rid of the lower interest rate. Maybe they have right now a 3.5% interest rate. So I say, you don't want to give away 3.5% interest rate, but you're willing to continue paying 20% on the credit cards. Versus if you took all these balances, because there's many people that have a lot of balances right now or high balances on credit cards, rather than paying that 20 some percent, we can consolidate these and get them paid off and spread over 30 years at 8% versus 20%. Some people just don't understand it, right? And as much as you break it down for them, they still don't understand it. They just want to be, and I listened to this one podcast, and the speaker said he himself had a 3% interest rate. And he said, I'm not going to refinance because it just makes me feel better knowing I have a 3%. Does it make sense? No, because if he had debt, if he was a person that had debt, then it doesn't make sense to hold on to this 3% when you can pay off all these items and bring it under an 8%. He said, but it's one of those things almost like a trophy. People hold it and they want to tell people, I have a 3% interest rate on my mortgage payment. It doesn't matter if you're paying 20% on all these other stuff, right? So it's just one of those things. He said, it's like wearing this badge. I'm proud I have a 3% interest rate on my mortgage. But you have all these cards with balances at 20%. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But people are going to continue to keep it because they're wearing it like a badge, wearing it proud, instead of it making sense and saying, it makes more sense for me to do this transaction than just to wear that badge of I have a 3% interest rate.
Yes, and to close the show, two things. We all have to do what's better to sleep at night. I personally think if you can't afford a house, it'd be better sleeping in your own house. And I know the number, I just gotta double check it, so I don't want to throw that number out there. But in the history of the United States, we sit at the highest credit card debt ever. I'm not sure if it's a billion or a trillion, but the credit card debt is as high as it's ever been. So yeah, I just wanted to ask that question that I told that guy. I was like, you already paid more than 7%. You just don't know it, or you just don't want to see it. But hey, like, and when I told him that, he kind of left like, okay. He kind of looked at me like, didn't really like the information, did not appreciate it, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the ending of our show. Thank you for joining us. Arlo Miranda with Remax Pro here with
Jeanette Duarte, Mountain West Financial.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great day.